Hello, everybody. We are here again to enjoy another wonderful day and participate in another webinar. Today, as many of you know, one of my great themes is grit and resilience. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that with from a different angle. Are our kids stubborn or tenacious? We'll give folks a few more minutes to join us, and we'll give uh, um, Jillian is going to be helping me host today, and let her get this live on Facebook if she can. Jillian, if you will allow me to share my screen, you can do so by clicking next to the arrow next to the share screen button. And then it says allow multiple users to host share screen. All right, we're just going to give it just a little bit longer to see. Gail and Pierre, it's always lovely to have you. Jen, welcome. Lee and Suzanne, great to see your names. I hope all is well in your home. Megan, welcome. Rosemary, we're glad to have you. Okay, folks, I got zapped out for a moment, but if you would please give me a thumbs up in the chat bar in the chat room if you can. Great. Um, glad to have. Okay, here we go. Let's get started.
Okay.
Okay, so today's theme is stubborn or tenacious, the power of persistence. And this this particular webinar was born out of one of the most remarkable young men I have ever worked with, and his name was Jordan.
Yeah. Kay's stupid crap keeps popping up.
What, what's that? You're not on mute, Jillian. Okay. Okay. So let's so in the in the chat, can you folks hear me? Someone type in whether or not you can hear me. Okay, great. All right, here we go. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about, you've heard me talk, I think, many of you, about turning strengths into opportunities, and so let's look at that and review that in a remarkable way, because for me, the power of the way to kind of move from stubborn to tenacity and move that into persistence is through proactivity and perseverance. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what those words mean and how we can help our kids who can be extremely stubborn and utilize that skill to do something remarkable. Because I will tell you that it's one of the things about our kids that make them so special is that they are, they have to persevere. They have to slog through the muck of high school when it isn't easy for them, whether it's because of the social challenges that they're facing or because of some of the learning challenges or a combination of both. So let's talk about proactivity. Proactivity is actively engaged in the world. You're taking leadership roles in work, community, social, and family settings. You're thinking about what it is that you want, and you're proactively trying to make that happen. Now, from a stubborn standpoint, what our kids do is they just dig their heels in and say, I'm not moving unless I get what I want. But when you begin to shift that and become more proactive about trying to accomplish what is it that you want through using self-advocacy, you begin to take initiative, make decisions, and then hopefully we start to have that negotiative process, and everybody becomes a little bit more willing to consult with each other and be flexible, considering the different options that might be available. What I often find is that with kids that who are stubborn, there tends to be a tremendous inflexibility there, and we want to try and loosen up some of that inflexibility. Just for those of you who are living and dealing with a young person who may have some type of autism spectrum disorder on the ASD scale. I was working with a young man in fact, it was in Belize, and we were at a ruin. And earlier, the day before, somebody had asked if they could use his sunscreen, and he said, "I don't share sunscreen." All right, and he stubbornly dug in. He was not willing to share his sunscreen. And so the next day, another student, was applying sunscreen, and he had forgot his back at camp, and he asked if they would share with him. Well, what do you suppose the willingness of these other students were to share their sunscreen with a young man who had refused to share it with them the day before? Well, of course they said, "No, I don't share." Well, sometimes when we look at the world through a very stubborn set of eyes, which he did that day, he looked at them in complete disbelief and said, "I just saw you share it with somebody else." So, sometimes that stubborn nature in our kids really does create an inflexibility with them that can become very difficult. And trying to convince them of what you're looking for in terms of um, the kinds of opportunities that uh, that 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 we want them to try and engage with, it can become difficult. And so um, let's look at ways to make that happen. Well, one of the first ways that I like to do that is I try and look for in advance the pitfalls that might derail our child. Are there reasons why they get particularly dug in? And I'll bet, like me, at home, if your child hears the word no, that can be a pitfall. And we can't avoid using that word because it's critical to allowing them to be successful in their world. So we have to find ways to allow that no to become a conversation sometimes, or create a transition that makes that no a little easier. Another another way to structure environments for success is to have less. Sometimes clutter creates distraction, and distractions create stubbornness, or an inability to move forward because they get wrapped up in trying to find the thing that they need or they want, and they can't possibly leave without the exact thing that they're looking for. And so they empty all their drawers and their closets, and they got under their bed. Now they've got a giant mess in their room, and perhaps your stubbornness is going to kick in at this point and say, well, we're not leaving until you clean your room. And now you've got a giant mess on your hands, which all could be avoided if there's just a little less junk, a little less busy, a little less in life to avoid some of those pitfalls. And then I think that if you expect your child to be invested, one of the most critical components to doing that, to creating proactivity in your child, is to collect their input and have it become a viable part of any conversation you're having. Because if you're bought in and you want to experience something with your partner and they're bought in, then that conversation goes much, much more smoothly. But if you're not bought in and you're sort of dragged kicking and screaming, we have these really interesting defense mechanisms that kick in, and we ultimately will find ways to sabotage those experiences. And your kids are incredible saboteurs, and they can be incredibly stubborn in the way that they dig in. And so trying to avoid that, part of that is to collect their input. I think that often distractions can derail our proactivity and remove us from the path that we're trying to head down in order to develop persistence. So I think it's important to differentiate between attentiveness and distractibility. And there are different ways to deal with each. If somebody is inattentive, you just remind them. If they're distracted, you bring them back. If they're moving to a place where it's avoidance, then you have a conversation about how to move back to helping create that stubborn, focused track as they're trying to look for something to accomplish. I think that you have interventions in play ahead of time. If you're hoping that through proactivity and you're tapping into that stubborn nature of your kids, think about in advance how those interventions might work so that you can guide them back. Think of yourself as little bumpers on a bowling alley, and the bumpers aren't there, but if they need to be, blip, they can pop up, reroute the bowling ball so it's working down towards its goal, and ultimately you're going to take out some of the pins at the bottom of the lane. So having those interventions planned in advance can be absolutely critical to the success of what you're trying to help them accomplish. And I think most of you would recognize that checklists can be a great way to help create that stay on track. I love, and my daughter, who is incredibly stubborn, but one of the things that she'll do is I know it's going to be successful if she says, Dad, let me get the notepad so I can make a checklist. And she loves to make her little checklist. And then even more than making the checklist, she sure likes scratching them off. And then sometimes we'll throw in a few items that we've already accomplished so that we can have that deep satisfaction of checking something off the checklist. So what are the things that distract us? Auditory distractions, there's, in fact, it's raining outside and I'm listening to thunder. Visual distractions, I have to, I'm always reminded of this wonderful story. I remember being in a math class in middle school, and we were learning, some geometric theories. And I was looking outside and I saw this green Volvo drive by, a little green Volvo wagon. It was the kind of wagon that had the back seat that would flip backwards, and you could sit in the way back. And I remember thinking to myself a few years ago, we took my dad's green Volvo and we drove down to Orlando. We went to Disney. You know what my favorite ride at Disney was? It was that log chute ride where we're riding the logs through the jungle and then it goes crashing down. And the poor teacher's trying to teach me, the how to find the intersection of X and Y in a triangle, and I'm in the Congo. And so sometimes visual distractions can move us off of that persistent, stubborn track that we get on. Sometimes tactily, for instance, I can feel the tag on the back of my shirt, and it's kind of bugging me a little bit. Some kids they need to wear something that is tight fitting, or a shirt that is nice and tight, because they need that tactile sense. We are kinesthetic learners, and so sometimes something that is more interesting and we can get our hands into it, will derail us. I will say, I'm going to add one here. I didn't put it, and that's but first disease. But first disease is when I go to find a pair of sunglasses and I look in the closet and I find the glue that I've been looking for. So I go to put the glue in the wood shop, and I realize there's a project in the wood shop that really needs my attention. And so I start working on the wood glue, and I've got to go get the sandpaper. And I go to the sandpaper and I find a piece of equipment, next to the sandpaper that had been broken that I've been meaning to fix. So I start tweaking and fixing that little piece of equipment, and my wife comes out and says, "Did you find the sunglasses?" And so kinesthetically, we are really drawn to get our hands into things, and those can distract us from that focus that you're looking for, sometimes that stubborn or tenacious aspect of who we are can help us zero in. I know that when I'm hungry, I'm less focused. If I'm under stress, or I'm tired, and then of course the greatest, both focal point and shifting from the focus where it needs to be, is the web, computers, any kind of IT equipment. And it'll either get me locked into the wrong place, or it'll derail me from the thing that I was trying to accomplish. So interestingly, I teach this process called API. All right, and API is interesting because it's an assess, plan, implement, evaluate. Now I'm trying to nurture some of those things that our kids can be really stubborn about, and give them the tools and techniques that we can shift, and really kind of high power that stubbornness and make it more tenacious so that they're moving forward. Now, what I noticed about API, and I've mentioned this before in some of my other chats, is that it begins with an assessment. What's the problem? What are my resources? What are the tools? What am I working with? Then you make a plan, then you implement the plan, and then you evaluate. But as you well know, our kids jump right into implement. And I think that's okay, because that initial implementation is part of that stubborn nature that gets to our kids. And if they're really excited about something, then they'll figure out what they did wrong, and they'll go back, and now they'll make an assessment and a plan. And that tenacity, that tenacious spirit will kick in, and we can massage the organic nature of that by asking some really important questions after they initially implement and fail. And what did we do well? What did you learn? What might you do next time? How's this going to work? Direct instruction, practice, and role play. Now, next Tuesday, I've got a very special guest who'll be joining us. It's a mother of a former student of ours, and they practice and role played every single day important conversations that Max will be having in advance. And that proactivity has led to great success for that young man. But when you practice and you practice so that when people are prepared, and move into a situation, that those role plays become very, very important. Yes, and Lee just wrote, but first it sounds like if you give a mouse a cookie. Yeah, my wife heard me tell that story recently, and she said if you give a pig a pancake, and it's absolutely right. Um, okay, so I also think that we move from stubborn to tenacious when we are invested in something that is positive. You may view something stubborn because you don't like what they're doing, but if you did like what they were doing, you would see it as being tenacious. Uh, a quick example: my son. Those of you that know me know that my son is a gamer, and he also runs cross country, and he's on the tennis teams. He's got a nice balance. He's an honor student. Yes, I'm bragging. He has got a nice balance of things that he likes, but I believe he spends an inordinate amount of time on the computer. And so he was playing this game called Brawlhalla. Well, while I chafed at the sheer amount of time he would spend on the computer, his mother took a very different tact, and she allowed him to go to the Atlanta for the national championships, where he played other students, and they did that for 2 years, and then she said, "Why don't you take him this year?" And so his third year, we went, and I dropped him off, and he walked in, and he's a big deal. Everyone knows him, and he knows all these people. And now he's playing these games, and it was in the Atlanta Convention Center, and he made it to the semifinals, and his game is up on the giant screen, and there are two announcers discussing the battle that he's having with this other student. With this other kid, an older person, and they're fighting away, and I found myself just completely blown away by the fact that he had found this little community of people that he enjoyed, they enjoyed them, and you know he was having a battle with another student, with another person, and it was being streamed online live, watched by a ton of folks, and it was really cool. Later on, I was walking around, I saw some other folks, and asked them, what they were doing there, and they mentioned they were there for Brawlhalla, and I said, "Oh, my son is ranked," and I said, "Who's your son?" And I told them his name, and like, "Dude, that guy's awesome." So here, his tenacity. Now, I will say this: I would much have preferred his tenacity if it ended up in some sort of cash winnings, but to date, that has not happened. Um, okay, so we move. What is perseverance? All right, so being proactive is setting yourself up for success. Here we're moving into sort of that stubbornness aspect. We pursue goals despite difficulties. We know when to quit rather than change our tactics. We learn from hardships and mistakes, and we accept this failing forward mindset. It's a mindset you've heard me talk about before, failing forward. So create a vision for your child and encourage them to do the same, that is going to be different in, my son is going to be a senior next year. That pains me to say. He's going to be a senior, and school changed for him when he was able to start taking some courses at the community college, and he's started looking at what his career might be, and he's been looking at colleges, and all of a sudden, there's a different attitude and nature about what that's going to look like, because he recognizes that there's going to be significant more control in his life as to what he's doing. I think that kids at a young age should start doing some job shadowing, and doing some service learning, because when kids realize that they are a part of the solution, and they have power, and they can put a smile on a homeless person's face by just providing a warm meal and a smile and a kind word, that changes a person. And so we want them to be drawn to and driven to living above and beyond themselves. Adulthood is filled with choices and options. And I think, it has benefited my family to recognize the achievements of certain LD and ADHD adults that would absolutely not give up. Can you think of a few? I would love for my the folks who are participating in this chat to type in a name of somebody with a learning disability or ADHD that just absolutely refused to give up. I'll give you a second. Whoopi Goldberg, love her. Absolutely. All right, who's going to throw one out? Gail, Pierre, Lee, anybody? Warren Buffett. I like it. I like it. So I'm practicing something right now in my perseverance, and that is, the pregnant pause, the waiting, the cow woman. Well, Pierre, is that the woman who's Moink? Is is that who you're talking about, or is there a different cow? Oh no, you're talking about the woman with autism that changed the world. Michael Phelps is another one. Einstein, great. What was her name? Grandin. That's right, Grandin. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to give you another list here of folks that Bruce Jenner. Oops. Bruce Jenner, Agatha Christie, Charles Schwab. Did you folks know? In fact, Charles Schwab has such a significant learning disability, he's a dyslexic, that he started a foundation that has funded millions of dollars to support this community of people. Winston Churchill, Nelson Rockefeller, Jack London was the voice of a generation, and Emily Dickinson, Teddy Roosevelt, George Patton, Albert Einstein, Tom Cruise. So just to name a couple of really remarkable folks refused to give up, absolutely refused to give up. All right, I think it's important for teaching positive self-talk. Start with the thought for the day or the thought for the week. Use affirmation statements, and I have a couple here that I try and encourage my kids to utilize. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. Yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. When the going gets tough, the tough keep going. And notice that I changed the wording there. What the wording is, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. But the truth is, our kids have known that it's been tough. And for them, they have to keep going. I got to throw a shout out to a gentleman named Scott DeFoyd, who is a dear friend and has grown up with us as a learning disability and would refuse to let that keep him down. In fact, he went on to become a physical therapist and has had a tremendous career. Success comes in I cans, failure comes in cannots. And then one of my personal favorites, try. There is no try. There is only do or do not. That's my best Yoda. I love that. I never said it would be easy. I only said it would be worth it. Absolutely. And then another one that I didn't write down was that, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. And so when I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and dig in and work hard, there's just remarkable things that we can accomplish. And it is that stubborn nature. It is that willingness to persevere and to push forward and to keep going when the going gets tough that makes us so remarkable. It is what makes us the unique human beings that we are. And in fact, I would argue that this stubborn streak in us, this tenacious streak, may be one of the most incredibly inherent talents that we possess. Think about it for just a moment. What are we asking our kids to do? We're asking them to wake up early in the morning when they may not be morning people. We're asking them to get to school on time when they're disorganized and getting anywhere on time is a challenge. We're then asking them to go to a location back when we went to school and learn in a format that wasn't particularly conducive nor was it tailored to my learning style. All right, and so some of our kids really struggle in school and don't find success there. And, so imagine going to a workplace every day where, you're only beat up and you don't seem to get anything done. Then you get home, you've got more work that you're expected to do at home, and you wake up the next day and do it all over again. And so when the tough gets going, the tough keep going. Um, Expect to allow for performance inconsistency. There are days when my daughter she's going to have a beautifully clean room, and then there are days where I'm going to come home and the room is a complete disaster. I can't control which one is which unless she's got friends over and is highly motivated to get her room clean. But there's going to be that performance inconsistency. And one of the things that I've worked hard not to do is to beat my kids up with the fact that I know they can, with their successes. I embrace them. I revel in them. I love it when they are successful, but I don't say to them ever, see, you can do it. Why don't you do it? Because I don't want to take away from their accomplishments. And then I want to talk about a strategy that you can use with your kids is to reframe keywords. For instance, I would never say you should have done this or you should have done that. I think that there are way too many of us who are shooting on our kids. I'll let that one sink in for just a second. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting and why that plays an important component in what we're trying to help kids accomplish when we are trying to help nurture that stubborn, tenacious spirit and help them be persistent. When you set goals that are specific, there's some degree of flexibility and they're realistic and achievable, you create an opportunity where it's much more there's a higher degree of possibility that we're going to be successful. And then it's really important to understand the step-by-step process for reaching those goals. And we talked a little bit about that. What are the incremental steps that allow us to do so? When kids are young, you have to do all that heavy lifting. You've got to build all those steps in. You've got to help nurture that success and then walk them through that. But as they get older, one of the things that becomes so remarkable about our stubborn kids is they want to do more for themselves. And so you have to allow for that to happen. You do less and allow them to do more, because the more that they have to do and the more they have to overcome failure, the more willing they are to allow that stubborn, tenacious spirit to take hold and allow them to have experiences that will lead to success. So how do we do that? Well, we establish routines. Routines are one of the best ways and trust me, as you get into your routines, your kids will become just as stubborn to make sure that the routine stays nice and strong. Okay, once a routine is established, how difficult is it to violate that cycle with some of these kids who are very structured and very, very rigid? I love checklists, countdown timers, watches, apps that help, to-do lists, project planners, written deadlines, little post-it notes, and reminders. We all, in the Willson household, we all know that to look out. If we see a post-it note somewhere, it was posted for us by the mom of the house, and it's giving us information that we absolutely need. Teach and consistently utilize goal setting. See, and I mentioned this a couple of times, when you help your kids define reasonable goals and objectives that allow them to push forward and move through in a way that is thoughtful and purposeful, then that becomes something that they can accomplish, and they do. And that allows them to sort of not get derailed from that tenacious train that they find themselves on. Evaluate often and celebrate successes, and have 3 ongoing goals at most. Otherwise, things get cluttered. And as things get cluttered and we become distracted, that moves us off of being able to kind of move forward and be stubborn and tenacious and persistent. I hearken back to a story about one of the world's leading forensic scientists, and she is the world's best. What she does is she takes a skull and she molds with clay based following it. And when it's all said and done, you have a face on the skull, and it can help with identification purposes. And somebody asked her how on earth she's so good at this. And this is, by the way, I forget her name, but this is something that she started doing late in life. And in fact, she went to school and got her master's degree very, very late in life. But she's absolutely renowned and considered one of the very best in the world at this. And her answer is so much an answer of our kids. And that is that once she starts, she hardly eats, she can't sleep. All she can do is think about the next thing, and she focuses on it almost to a degree where she perseverates on this thing, this stubborn, absolutely perseverative nature, focused on one thing. We see it happen in our kids all the time, and sometimes it's with computers, it's with Minecraft, it's with building a city, it's with making something, and sometimes it can be almost dangerous because we want to have our kids move off and create some clarity. But we have to know that there's this incredible strength in there, and if our kids possess it, we fan those flames so that they can turn it on and turn it off when it's going to be more successful versus when it's going to be destructive. Goal setting is a mixture of looking at our cognitive abilities, what we can physically get, do, the supports that we're going to need from social and emotional spirit, and then diving in with all those puzzle pieces in place that allow us to be successful. We've done these family workshops for years, and in 2014 we had a mom, and she shared these two quotes. I thought they'd be great in this. My son has two kinds of time: now and never. And then her advice to procrastinators: when's the best time to do something? Right now. And I've lived my life by that. And I'm trying to teach my kids: when's the best time to do something? Right now. When do they think the best time to do something is? I'll get to it later. And when do they get to it? Never. I'm also, as if you've heard me speak, you know that I'm a big fan of Stephen Cubby, and so I love the idea of beginning with the end in mind. I think it's also important to keep the main thing the main thing, and that's a Rick Lavoieism. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. First things first, schedule your priorities, and then evaluate tasks using a burner system. Now, I'm going to show you next. This is Cubby's evaluate task, and he's got the quadrant system. And if you've never read Cubby, this is kind of important because you've got urgent one. You've got four quadrants. There's urgent. There's not urgent. There's not important and important. And so where you want to live is really in the not urgent but important. All right, in quadrant three, or quadrant four, important, not urgent, but important. And so what I very often get stuck in is the urgent and not important. I get started on a project and it's not urgent, not important, but for some reason I just absolutely have to finish it, and it's that perseverative, stubborn nature in me. But sometimes I'll start working on a woodworking project. I've just finished a little coffee table for my mother-in-law, and 2 o'clock in the morning, my wife is like, "You're going to wake up the neighborhood. Put the thing down." I'm there on the table saw. So you get caught up sometimes in that, and that's a really attractive place, the important but not urgent, because it feels or the not important but urgent place. So think about things and put them in this category, and then help your kids look at all the tasks that need to be accomplished, and try where. Now again, where we find ourselves often is the urgent and the important, because that's, as procrastinators, that's where we live, because we're action oriented, and that allows us to kind of maintain our focus, but it isn't the safest and best place for us to live. I've talked about failing forward with confidence and learning from failures. And the way we learn from failures is we are creating opportunities where we can examine what happened, where we were successful, where we failed, what we could have done better, what we'll do next time. And sometimes you can create scenarios where you nurture that. One of the fun, one of the great things that we do at SOAR are these wonderful initiatives. And because we have these initiatives, we can teach how something is done, examine how we did that, and then try again. You probably know, there's the classic egg drop. You take 25 straws, 5 feet of tape, and then make a cushion for an egg to drop from a height of 6 feet. Uh, and if it bounces, you were successful. And if it cracked open, you clean it up and examine what you did wrong and try and do another one. But that's failing forward with confidence. The ability to make a mistake, to learn from that mistake, to examine that mistake, and then allow yourself to kind of push forward. Because we have to find ways to boost our capabilities. And I'm going to end with this really wonderful slide. It's a cartoon called Pluggers. And we pluggers never lower our goals. We just find ways to boost our capabilities. I've always wanted to dunk, and the only way I've been able to do it is to either lower the basket or find something to jump off of. So I'm free to open this up for as long as this storm will allow us to be online. Are there any questions? You can put questions in the chat bar, or you can put them in the question and answer period. Oh, you know what? Thank you so much, Gail. I do want to talk about flow because the theory of flow is just so incredible. And when you find yourself in flow, you just absolutely you begin to fire on all cylinders. And so there are ways to manipulate and make sure that you put yourself in the best situation to experience flow. And by doing that, you are going to create these unique opportunities where where you can be incredibly successful. I'll say that that one of the things that 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 can help help with that is um, is is to make sure that you've gotten lots of rest, make sure that you've gotten some incredible nutrition, and that you're interested in doing some things. I'm posting right now a website where you can look at where you can look at the theory of flow by Mikhail and his wife. I always say his name Csikszentmihalyi, but let's see how to pronounce. All right, but the way that they pronounce their name is Mihaichik. So pronounce Mihaichik. So I'm a huge fan of the theory of flow by Mihaly Mihaichik. So other questions or thoughts? How do you help a child slow down? How do you help a child slow down when others slow down others to her speed of operating? That's that's impossible. And I know that we become so impatient when, as somebody who operates at, when I'm 3 or 4 steps ahead of everybody else, and it's just really difficult to slow down. I think of it like a video game, and if you're working as a team, you've got to get to a level, but everyone's got to get to that level before you level up. And so then the question is, how do they come back to your level to help you get to where they need to be, versus getting them to slow down, because getting them to slow down is really tough. Now, it's also really important, because think about test taking. How do we as kids, how do we take tests? Well, we just bomb through it, and we've made mistakes, and we haven't read all the questions, and we're not entirely sure. So I'm going to give you my favorite quote that I say all the time at SOAR and to my family. I don't know to what degree it works for them, but they've heard it no less than 1,000 times, and that's this: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so I'll say that to my kids, and I'll say, what does that mean? And they're like, I don't know. And then I'll say, well, if you did know, what would you say? And now they got to think about it. And slow is smooth. If I take my time and I move forward, then I'm going to be successful. Now, Gail, you wrote, if her pace of success is slow, others overwhelm her by hurrying her up, and that is a challenge. And one of the ways that I try and overcome that particular challenge is by working hard to remove those barriers and not let others set a pace that is going to disrupt her. And so I think it's critical that we're able to control how others are impacting our kids when we're trying to nurture a growth experience for them. Okay. Are there any other questions before we sign off and say goodbye? All right. Well, hearing none, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. As always, the slides will be up some before next Tuesday, and we hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. We appreciate you. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.